But for Commanders fans, they have waited decades for that moment. And I think it leads into the first conversation. RG3 was talking about this with Kay Adams on the Up and Adams show, and just saying, RG3, say the ownership stayed, but they still had the second pick, and Jaden Daniels was there. Would this have all been possible? And I mean, RG3 made it very clear and very blunt about how he felt it would have gone. So let's play that clip.
It was still in place, and they did draft Jaden Daniels. Would they be in the NFC Championship game?
Nah.
Why?
Nah.
I guess I'm trying to understand the cultural.
Hey, you were digging today. Now you're digging. It's listen, Jaden's a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. That was the second pick in the draft. There's a lot of parallels there between myself and him. Both athletic quarterbacks, took the league by storm my rookie years, and the difference is moving forward for Jaden. You can catch lightning in a bottle for 1 year, no matter how dysfunctional you are. I've been on many teams that were very dysfunctional that won conference, not conference championships, but won their division. When we won our division in 2012, our team was one of the most dysfunctional ever. I just didn't know about it because I did not know what I didn't know. And for Jaden, he doesn't have a GM, an owner, a head coach, or an offensive coordinator that are feuding. These guys all have a singular vision of him being successful, and they don't care who gets the credit. And that, to me, has been the greatest thing for Jaden, because going into this offseason, one, he's not injured. And then two, they're going to be able to build more around him with massive cap space. When I was there in 2012, we had no cap space in 2013. And we had all those things that were going on. And I think when you have a dark cloud around your organization, or you have things that is infighting, it only hurts your young quarterback. Jaden Daniels doesn't have that. Josh Harris, Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, and Cliff Kingsbury, they all want this guy to be successful. It's not your guy versus our guy. This is our guy. This is his city. And to me, that's going to lead to them being successful for the next 10 to 15 years. And I couldn't be happier for them.
So the quick answer was nah.
Yeah.
And just no, not a chance. But I'm glad he gave that description. And we've talked about this extensively. And the big thing that I wanted people to emphasize, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have the foundation and the culture set within your organization, you're screwed. And that's all across sports. But if you want to look at the best run organizations, the team that have the most success, heck, you might not like the Chiefs. We'll talk about them next. Look at that infrastructure, their coaching staff, their players, from the top up from their organization all the way down. There's a sense of continuity and belief that allows for everything to go. Washington, RG3 said that they're right. We saw all the reports that came out after RG3's departure. Issues with coaches, issues with the owner and the coaching staff and players. But then also the players didn't feel like there was a bought-in belief that they could go out and win. And in an instant, you bring in a guy that is leader of men in Dan Quinn. You bring in an offensive coordinator that says, we're drafting this guy. I'm going to help him develop. And you know what? We're in it together, good or bad. And they go on this wonderful ride for the Commanders. And now you saw that cap space that was thrown up. Brad, you mentioned it too. They are set up to be a force. Yeah. Now they got to walk the walk again, but they are set up. And that does not happen if they don't completely change everything and Dan Snyder doesn't sell the team.
I was going to ask, this is bar was set really high for Jaden Daniels' first season. And we saw CJ Stroud take a little bit of a step back. So I guess expectations are high. It's very fresh as far as the NFC Championship's concerned. But where should expectations be for the Commanders next year? Like Super Bowl. Is Jaden Daniels? Yeah, but okay. But you have so much other competition. I mean, the Lions weren't healthy. If they're healthy next year, that's going to be something to look at too. So I'm just trying to is the Super Bowl now the standard for the Commanders moving forward because they made an NFC Championship game, or is there any sort of wiggle room there because it was Jaden Daniels' first season?
I don't think it's necessarily that's the standard, but I think that is the goal. Whereas this playoffs, I feel like they were very much playing with house money, where it's like we were talking about, they got pretty much blown out yesterday, and everyone's still like, incredible last year. Awesome. You guys accomplished so much. If they make it back to the NFC Championship, if they make it back to the divisional round, it's a success because it's a second-year quarterback on a young team. Like, so that's still a success. But I think they're now their goal. Whereas, as much as they'll tell you going into like down the stretch run that they're like, no, our goal is to win the Super Bowl. They understood the expectation was we're probably not. But I think then it's, if you use the cap space correctly and you build around that and you put out a better team, now the goal is, okay, we have a legit chance to put a Super Bowl team out there. Doesn't mean that it's Super Bowl or bust.
Yeah.
But I think now you have serious conversations about, this team is in that upper echelon of, they can do it.
Right. Now I think that they have tasted the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
Anything less than that will be viewed by the fans as a disappointment
Mhm.
because it is a literal step back. But I agree with Zach where it's like it shouldn't be the standard here because Jaden's going into his second season and there is a lot of wiggle room with this team. They're going to have years to compete for years to come. But I just feel like the way the NFL has gone, if there's not a step forward, it's viewed as a massive step back. And so if Jaden Daniels loses in the divisional round, they run into a good matchup, it's a close game, and Jaden plays well, everybody's gonna say, well, they made the championship game last year, and now they didn't make it that far, so it's a failure. I don't think that's the conversation we should be having, especially for a second-year guy. So I think Super Bowl is great, but they don't have to get there now. They have a long way to go.
And like Brad, you said, the Lions were extremely banged up this year. If they go out next year and they lose to the Lions in the divisional round, no one's going to sit there and go, this season's a failure for
But that's how people view it. And honestly, quite frankly here, as the years keep rising and you don't get to that Super Bowl, because we'll go to the quarterback in Baltimore, talk about a quarterback that took the NFL by storm when he really took over the job fully in 2019. When Lamar took over in 18, low expectations. They end up winning the division, fall to the Chargers. But it was like, okay, first year. Then they dominate everybody. And then they had that game against Tennessee. And that no matter what, going back there, winning a playoff game isn't satisfactory anymore. Jaden Daniels' expectation level is he's been being put in the category as a top 5 quarterback. So I think the expectation for Jaden is going to rise, and the success of how the team goes is going to then further predicate to what it is. Whether that's fair or not, Kev, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I also think with the cap space conversation, like obviously their defense was not up to snuff this season, and they need to improve. They need to get some guys around Terry McLaurin in that offense too. If they go out there and they spend all this money, they get like a 1A next to Terry. They go out there and just completely revamp
they need a
and
running
upgrade
back.
that defense. Yes, running back, that's a good one too. If they do all of that, and you look at the team on paper and you say, "Wow, this is so much better than they were at," and look, I think it's not a miracle because Jaden did a great job, but like that roster they had serious flaws and they still were able to get to the championship game. So if they don't get there next season with a better, well-rounded roster, that conversation becomes, well, they spent all the money and they did all this, but why can't they get there? This was a failure, which again is just the way that NFL discourse runs these days.
My favorite tweet from yesterday was Commanders really brought Brian Robinson to a Saquon Barkley fight. It talks about just how good that team for Philly is. They were like Jason. I still think overall Jaden Daniels is probably, I would put him above Hurts. Obviously Hurts does an incredible job with what he has and just so much talent around him. But Philly's just top to bottom was so much better.
Yeah, and look, actually, and shout out Philly, where for a team roster wise,
beautiful, they
were unbelievable. And we've talked about teams where you looked at it and go, this team's a better roster than that team. But that team doesn't always win, right?
We know all about that.
And Philly did it. They really ran the table. Besides that one game against the Commanders, which Jalen got knocked out, they ran the table. And they proved that they had the best roster, and they proved that they deserved to go on to represent the NFC. And I do like this point from Jerry Royce here to close out this part of the conversation. And this is going to help the Commanders next year. The deal breaker is that you need good coaching around for your stars to shine, and mentioning that the Kansas City staff isn't going anywhere for years. The continuity of having Spags as your defensive coordinator and having Andy Reid, who's your offensive guru, that helps. And obviously helps that you have Patrick Mahomes. But for next year, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Cliff Kingsbury's, he's back.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Dan Quinn's got to be back, right? Their defensive coordinator back. So that continuity within your organization helps. The Lions, that certainly helped with them retaining Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson for the 2024 season. Now they're gone. What does that look like for the Lions? So that plays in the favor of the Commanders, but one hell of a year and one hell of a turnaround